Good morning. Is Darnell Tyson, Suffolk County, in the room? Okay.
Okay. Good morning. Oh, it is on. Great. Good morning. And all right. Welcome to the annual meeting of the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council. I am Deborah Nelson. I am the director of the Office of Policy, Planning, and Performance at the New York State Department of Transportation. And I'm also the secretary for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, or NYMTC. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the NYMTC website in 2 weeks of this meeting. At this time, I will begin with the roll call. When I announce your agency, I am asking each principal or representative to state your name and agency, and if applicable, whom you are representing. I will begin with the voting members. New York State Department of Transportation.
Therese, Dominguez, present.
New York City Department of Transportation. New York City Department of City Planning.
Jack Schmidt, representing Dan Garatnik.
Nassau County.
Kenneth Arnold, representing County Executive Bruce Blake.
Suffolk County.
Morning, Darnell Tyson, representing County Executive Angela Main.
Rockland County.
Stephen Powers, representing County Executive Ed Day.
Putnam County.
Barbara Barossa, representing County Executive Kenneth Burns.
Westchester County.
George Latimer, Westchester County Executive.
Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Michael Schiffer, representing, for the moment, Jano Lieber, Chair of the MTA.
Thank you. And now we will go to the advisory members of the council. Federal Transit Administration.
Michael Collada, Regional Administrator.
Federal Highway Administration.
Rick Marquis, New York Division Administrator.
New Jersey Transit.
Jerry Michelangelo, representing President Kevin Corbett.
North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority.
David Barron, present.
United States Environmental Protection Agency.
Matt Larita, representing Regional Administrator Lisa Garcia.
Port Authority of the New York and New Jersey.
Michael Wozner, representing Executive Director Rick Cotton.
And New York State Department of Environmental Conservation.
John Binder, representing Commissioner Basil Segos.
Great, thank you all. By my count, and under our operating procedures, we have a quorum for today's meeting. I would now like to turn the meeting over to NYMTC's co-chairs, New York State Department of Transportation Commissioner Therese Dominguez and Westchester County Executive George Latimer.
Thank you, Deb. Good morning, everybody. Therese Dominguez, New York State Department of Transportation. First of all, let me begin by acknowledging a few folks today. We, as I say, have an abundance of blessings today for a few things. One, we're in person for our NYMTC meeting, and that indeed is a blessing for all of us to get together live and in person, having come through the pandemic. Things have changed, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but transportation has also changed, and I'm very grateful that everybody has survived well, thrived, and moved into literally a new mode. There's a lot of great, wonderful things that are happening. Innovation is thriving in New York State and across the state. And NYMTC and the entire region that it serves is a great representation of all of that. It's exciting to be here in person with so many of our partners. One of the things that NYMTC was adept at doing is getting us online immediately in a virtual setting and putting us on a computer screen, but nothing really replaces being in person. So when I say the world has changed, the last time we met was 2020. It was February of 2020, and literally a few short days later, the state, in particular, New York State, was front and foremost on the pandemic. And transportation was critical. Transportation was critical during the pandemic, and how we all moved as a region and how we literally provided service, whether it be transit service to critical emergency responders, for people who needed to staff hospitals, nurses, doctors, for food delivery. It was remarkable what came together at every level of government, at every level of humanity to service one another. So let's all keep that in mind. Sometimes we get comfortable where we are and how much we've done, but let's not forget what an incredible level of effort it took. And to those that actually served on a day in, day out basis, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you've done. Transportation, how and when and how people travel has changed. We've all changed. Our focus has changed. The role of transportation and its importance in shaping communities. The theme today is connecting communities. It's become more important now than ever, which is why we're putting people and communities at the center of our transportation decisions. Not just at New York DOT, but New York State DOT, but across the board in everything that we're doing. And the investments are reflective of all of that. That's why our role at NYMTC could not be more important. This council is made up of principals from the lower Hudson Valley, from New York City, from Long Island, and from all of the incredible transportation partners around the table. But it really is the entity that provides the foundation and the framework to bring us all together. And the work that we do together is what's really critical. To envision the future of transportation together. To make decisions together about how we actually plan, how we fund this region's transportation projects. Because this region is critical to the economy of the overall nation. Think about what New York represents. We are fundamental and profoundly impactful to the entire national economy. And we develop a plan to take these actions and make this vision of NYMTC real. That's what this is. Deciding collaboratively which projects are going to move forward, how they're going to be funded, and we have an abundance of riches. The riches have come in very unique ways in a post-COVID environment, and they're pretty foundational to the work that we're executing right now in terms of all the transportation work that's getting done in New York State and our surrounding environs. And that comes in the form of federal funding. With the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure legislation and a record level of funding from the state of New York under Governor Kathy Hochul, we have an opportunity and an obligation to make wise investments in transportation that are truly going to shape and enhance our communities across the board. Not just for today, but into the future. And that includes addressing New York State's climate goals, whether that's through our work on congestion pricing or a new tunnel across the Hudson. In some cases, it also means, when we talk about connecting communities, it also means righting the wrongs of the past. But it also means listening fundamentally to what people and communities are asking of their transportation systems, to make informed and equitable decisions that help communities to be strong and connected and vibrant. We're all in this together, and NYMTC provides us with that strong partnership. And importantly, it gives us a collective decision-making authority to actually execute. We really have an impact on our transportation decisions that shape our region and shape our nation. And today's annual council meeting theme, Connecting Communities, really has deep and abiding meaning, not only to Governor Hochul, who has put forward a very robust Connecting Communities program, but also for New York State DOT, how that translates directly to us. But across our regions and everything that we're doing, we just sat down with the principals just before this meeting. It's profound what's going on in this region. I'm proud to say that there's not a state in the nation that's doing more than New York to connect and reconnect communities. I always say from the Bronx to Buffalo and many places in between, we have an incredible level of investment. So when I say the Bronx to Buffalo, I mean from Hunts Point all the way out to the 33, the Kensington project. It's important because we're taking down old infrastructure that separated people and bringing people back together. And we're doing it in new and innovative ways. So why are we doing all this? Because a safe and reliable transportation network means the difference between having access to fresh and healthy food. It means, are you going to be limited in what you can actually access? Are you going to be in a food desert? Or are we going to be able to make sure that you have access to food? It means getting to work. It means making sure that you're not missing out on any job opportunities. It means having access to healthcare and education. Holding off on a doctor's visit should not be an option that people execute. We need to make sure that we have safe and reliable transportation systems across the board. So that when you ask the why behind the transportation networks that we have in place, the true purpose is to actually make sure that we're servicing people where they're at, what they need to do, and how they need to do it. When we invest in projects, we're investing in people. And that means investing in the entire journey of their life. It truly is an exciting time to be in transportation, and it's my privilege to serve as co-chair of the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council. And to be here amongst this esteemed group of colleagues is truly an honor of a lifetime. We have visionary leaders here in New York, and we, like I said at the very beginning, we have an abundance of riches in terms of the leadership that's with us today. We're very lucky that as part of our program, we're going to have Veronica Vanderpool, who is now the acting Federal Transit Administrator at the federal level from USDOT with us. And we also have with us the Federal Highway Administrator, Shaylin Bott, both of whom represent the level of partnership at the federal level that's critical to all of the work that we do here across New York. So I very much appreciate their presence. We all do. We also appreciate their collaboration and the work that they do. It really is a partnership across the board. For everybody that NYMTC represents, your foresight, your strategic vision is essential to creating a more connected, resilient, and inclusive New York. When we really dig deeper as to the why behind the work that we do, we realize that it's not just about getting from point A to point B, it's about fundamentally connecting people to opportunities, to resources, to essential services. That's what fundamentally makes the real difference in people's lives. And with the federal government, with our partners across the board, with Governor Kathy Hochul, all of our NYMTC regional partners, we're going to create a transportation network that truly benefits everyone. So I want to thank everyone for their partnership. I want to thank our team at NYMTC, led by Adam Levine. We're so incredibly proud that all of New York State and NYMTC, everything that's been accomplished so far, and think of the incredible things that we've got planned for the future. One of the things that's going to be highlighted is some of the work that we're doing to plan into 2050 with a master plan for transportation. Very exciting things on the horizon for New York. So with that, I know that we'll build a brighter future together. Thank you all very much. And with that, let me turn it over to my co-chair, County Executive George Latimer.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And it's been an honor to have you serve with you in this 1 year that I've had the opportunity to. But thank you for your general leadership within the state on all of these issues, and Adam, to you and the NYMTC staff as well. I want to recognize two members of my Westchester County team that are here and have been absolutely essential on these issues as they arise in our government, and that's Joan McDonald, who's our Director of Operations. She's a past State Commissioner of the New York State Department of Transportation. She's held a number of different positions in transportation, and she has been my tutor in helping me understand the whys and the wherefores of transportation. And along with her is Blanca Lopez, who is our Commissioner of Planning, who is involved not only as a member of the MTA board now, but also in all of these different issues, and she's got a team of people in the planning department. So to both Joan and Blanca, who are here today, thank you very much for your leadership and the other members of our Westchester team. And I know that my colleagues representing other suburban counties also have similar quality teams in Bergen and Passaic and the state of New Jersey and Suffolk and Nassau, Rockland and Putnam, and in some of the counties that fall outside of the scope of this region, but for which we are all together. I mentioned when we had our meeting upstairs with the principals, and I'll repeat it with the apologies to my colleagues who are going to hear the same story twice. I couldn't help but, as we were coming down from Westchester County here today, to think about transportation and the other times in my life that I've been transported into this portion of Manhattan. And I reflected on when I was a young boy in the single digits, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. My mother would take myself and my sister on a vacation trip. We didn't have much money in that family. We grew up in the south side of Mount Vernon, and we'd each get to take a friend with us, and we would walk from my parents' house to the 241st Street subway in Wakefield. And we'd get on, I guess, the number 2 train that would take us down into this area, South Ferry, Bowling Green South Ferry. And we would get on the Staten Island Ferry, and our trip was the 5-cent ride over to St. George. And then when we got to the St. George terminal, in those days, before there was a Verrazano Narrows Bridge, there used to be a ferry from St. George over to 69th Street in Brooklyn. And the 4 kids, my sister, myself, and our 2 friends, and my mother, would take us on the second ferry ride over. So we had boat rides back and forth. We loved it as kids. We didn't have any Carnival cruises that we could afford in those days. And we played in the playground with the kids who were there, and then we took the trip back. We went through the harbor. We saw the Statue of Liberty from afar. We saw the skyline of New York City. And then we got to get back on the subway train, go right up to the front of the train, look out the window through the tunnels until above ground in the Bronx and all the way back up to 241st Street. And that was a great outing. That was transportation of that day. Fast forward to the period of time in which I served in my corporate career prior to becoming in public office. I was officed for the company that I worked for, this is probably about 30 years after that, about 20, 30 years ago, not far from here on Greenwich Street in Tribeca. And coming down meant that I would get on the commuter train in my home community, get off at Grand Central, take the subway over to Times Square, take the 1 train down to Franklin, and then walk a couple of blocks to the offices that I had that were embedded inside what was then Shearson Lehman. And I had responsibilities to meet with clients all across Lower Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan, and I'd subway and take and walk in those days as well where I could. So this is a 3rd different reason to be in this area of the city. And I realized in each of those cases, transportation was an essential part of whether it's a recreational trip or a business trip. And there are millions of people in this region, from Long Island to New Jersey to Connecticut to the Hudson Valley, that have reason to travel for whatever reason. Point in time in my life, I went to NYU grad school, came down into that portion of Manhattan. There were times when I had ready travel. I was telling the commissioner to and from Westchester, from Philadelphia where I lived, to come up to see my then girlfriend, now my wife, and I'd be on Amtrak. So this Gateway Tunnel thing would have been very much a big part of my life, taking those Friday night trains north and those Sunday trains back. And it's only one person's story, but it's reflective of all of the people that we represent in its totality. And while there's always much said about the suburbs versus the city, there are obviously differences between the suburbs and the city. There's differences between the respective suburbs and each other. But we're tied together. And this transportation connection is critical for people to live the lives they choose to live. If it's education, if it's employment, if it's entertainment, all of those things require us to have the best possible transportation system. And that transportation system does include road, and it includes rail, and all of the different iterations of those things. So what NYMTC is able to do as a regional entity is to try to access resources so that we can make improvements in those situations. We in Westchester County have a very robust bus system, the Beeline bus system. We have, I believe, the second largest bus ridership of any system in the state after the New York City system. And that bus system connects 1 out of every 4 riders, approximately, to either Metro North or to the New York City subway system, where we have those connections in our bus system. So the connectiveness between communities is built into our bus system and the riders that use the Beeline buses as they connect into the New York City system. And without the help of money that's come through our congressional representatives and NYMTC, we would not have reached the point that we have now, where our bus system is almost completely electric or electric hybrid. And we've also been able to suspend fares on our bus system during the summer months, as well as during the holiday seasons. We've been able to do that with the Beeline system in our county, having had other resources to be able to do that. And we know we're serving people that need that public transit. Young kids during the summer, senior citizens at all times, people that have that transportation need to go from point A to point B. And they may not think about the transportation any more than I thought about the transportation in the 2 stories that I've told. But our job as public officials, those of us who are elected officials, those of us who serve in important substantive appointed officials, our job is to make sure that that system works for people. And if I can get cosmic about it, which I did not do upstairs, this is what people expect out of democracy, that we can self-govern ourselves and provide the basic services of life. When you turn the tap, water comes out. When you flush the toilet, not to be more specific, that material disappears and is done so in a way that is healthy, public health, and we have that. And when they know that they have to get from point A to point B, there's a way to do it effectively and efficiently. When we provide that, we're doing the essential elements of democracy. It wasn't written into the Constitution, but it's written into the minds of the people that pay the taxes or the people that live and look at government, and they look at us with cynical eyes. They look at us as if, as decision makers, we are not making decisions for the benefit of most people. We're making decisions for ourselves or our cohort. And every time we make these improvements that we talk about, we're making a statement that we care more about the people we serve than we care about special opportunities and interests. This organization and the planning program, the United Planning Work Program, we love our acronyms, UPWP, represents an opportunity for us to have studies done that help us advance in our county the needs that we have. Pedestrian safety in Pelham and Mount Vernon, analyzing the Route 1 Boston Post Road corridor in Mamaroneck, things that we've done in other communities in our area. And that in the macro level, that we in Westchester County understand the importance of things that happen in New York City and elsewhere in the region. The MTA's effort, significant effort, to open up access from the East Bronx into Penn Station, now that Grand Central Madison opens up some tracks in Penn Station, that also benefits Westchester County. And that represents a common area of opportunity for us to work together on. Many of these other projects do as well. A complete streets corridor analysis. We're doing an aging mobility study, and our variety of different projects all benefit from this area. So we look forward as a county to being a good partner and participant with our fellow suburban counties, with the urban center that we all pivot around, with the state of New York, with the state of New Jersey. We're all tied together in this region. And we hope that as we look forward beyond any of our time in office, that we'll make decisions today that make sense 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road. It doesn't really matter if we, the individual, are here or not here. What does matter is that the decisions we make are foresighted so that in 20 and 30 years, the right things will be happening because we made the right decisions today.
Thank you very much. All right, can you guys hear me? Thank you very much, Co-Chair Latimer. With that, let me turn it over to Adam Levine, NYMTC's Executive Director, if you can provide an overall report on NYMTC. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Oh, is this one turned on? There we go. Thank you, Commissioner. To you and to everyone here, welcome back. Welcome back to our first in-person annual meeting, as the Commissioner said, in 4 years. I'm tempted to break out into a rousing but off-key, or off-color, I'm sorry, off-key, rendition of tradition from Fiddler on the Roof, because this is such an important returning tradition that I hope you're as excited about as I am. And we are so honored to have both of our federal administrators here today to mark the occasion, and each with an active history of coming to these meetings. To both of you, I say welcome home. We at NYMTC like to think that we are the center of the transportation universe, and your joining us today certainly does nothing to dissuade us from that idea. I want to thank Commissioner Dominguez and County Executive Latimer and all the members for selecting me this past March to serve as the 9th Executive Director in NYMTC's 42-year history. I have the honor of representing the passionate, hardworking staff at NYMTC, including our central office around the corner from here on Beaver Street, and our transportation coordinating committees in Poughkeepsie, Hauppauge, and Long Island City. Through their efforts, we have accomplished so much this past year on behalf of our members and everyone who lives, works, or travels in New York City, Long Island, and the lower Hudson Valley, accomplishments that I'm pleased and proud to share with you now. When we selected this year's theme of Connecting Communities, we did so amid the backdrop of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the largest investment in infrastructure in our lifetimes. Also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, this legislation, together with the Inflation Reduction Act, is giving state and local transportation agencies and authorities around the country the opportunity, or really the challenge, to make transformative changes, to make new connections where before there were none, to improve accessibility and enhance safety, to remove impediments to community and connection, and create those new spaces that allow people and neighborhoods to come together. Well, our members have grabbed those opportunities and they are running with them, to the tune of over $8 billion in discretionary grants across 32 projects in just the first 2+ years of the legislation. Challenge most definitely accepted. Part of the mission of NYMTC is to help our members be prepared to capture those federal funds, and we hope we have not disappointed. But our mission goes well beyond that, for it speaks of a collaborative forum that focuses our efforts on achieving a shared regional vision, one facilitated by sound technical analysis. Once again, I hope you'll agree that we have met this vital moment. Our upcoming Regional Transportation Plan, Moving Forward 2055, got underway this past year with an outreach effort that has captured thousands of comments that reflect the transportation priorities of our region. From Cold Spring to Cutchogue and everywhere in between, whether in person or online, people are sharing their opinions with us about safety, equity, resiliency, and congestion, and we are listening. Also kicked off this past year was our Thriving Communities Network. Patterned after the program led by our federal partners, the NYMTC effort is bringing together community leaders and non-governmental organizations to help them learn more about the transportation planning process so that they can compete for federal, state, and local transportation funds to advance projects in traditionally underrepresented and disadvantaged communities. Our community planning workshops were relaunched in late 2022 and continued through 2023. Held in Westchester, Putnam, and Nassau counties so far, these workshops bring together community members, local officials, and the NYMTC team to focus on specific transportation issues with a level of detail and a volume of spirited discussion that can only come from living in a place for years, and sometimes their whole lives. Recently, in a serendipitous overlapping of initiatives, some of our community planning workshop participants shared their experiences with our Thriving Communities Network members to give them a sense of the benefits the workshops offer. We hope to be bringing a workshop to a community near you in the days ahead. NYMTC staff kicked off or continued several planning studies this past year, again meeting our mission of collaboration, a shared vision, and technical analysis. These included a Palisades Shared Use Path study to connect the George Washington and Governor Mario M. Cuomo bridges, a Northern Westchester East-West Corridor study from Peekskill to the state line, and a regional waste movement study that goes across the entire NYMTC region and well beyond. Meanwhile, our members have undertaken so many initiatives funded through previous NYMTC Unified Planning Work programs, like the one we will be adopting today. Just to name a handful, there were the efforts by Putnam, Suffolk, and Westchester counties to reimagine their transit networks, in some cases for the first time in decades, the development of a first mile, last mile planning toolkit by the MTA to help improve access to Metro North and Long Island Railroad stations, a safety and sustainability study in Clarkstown on routes 303 and 304, progress on Nassau County's electric vehicle fleet conversion and charging station master plan, and I'll finish off the list with a mention of the studies undertaken by New York City DOT and New York City Department of City Planning to improve freight movement and study the impacts of telecommuting. So whether in terms of funding or collaboration, collective planning or technical analysis, NYMTC members and staff are again most definitely accepting the challenge of this moment. I'd like to close my report by talking about another very important community we're connecting, the community right here in this room. Prior to coming to work at NYMTC, I was often an attendee at these meetings. I know this speaks to the transportation nerd that I am, but I found it truly thrilling to be in a room with those agency leaders as they charted the course of our transportation network for years and decades to come. They would talk of the transformational projects that were in the offing or underway, projects such as Eastside Access, which became Grand Central Madison, or projects like Hunts Point Interstate Access Improvement, Fulton Street Transit Center, Governor Mario Cuomo Bridge, or the Long Island Railroad Third Track, and so many more. The excitement in those meetings came as much from the discussion as from the projects being discussed, because it was about the transportation community coming together and sharing those grand transformational ideas. We shouldn't understate the necessity of gatherings like this one. You can't connect communities by yourself. It takes the ideas and the efforts and the determination of the people on this stage, in this room, in this city, and across the NYMTC region to help bring together communities of all sizes. I'll end by thanking the staff at NYMTC as well as our members for all of your hard work. Your dedication and service to the people of New York City, Long Island, and the Lower Hudson Valley is, as always, very much appreciated. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your inspiring words, Adam. With that, we have a very distinguished speaker, and I'm going to turn it over to our co-chair, County Executive Latimer, to introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're very fortunate to have two very important and talented people here to speak with us. And the first one is a person that I got to know long before this assignment. Veronica Vanderpool has just been taken on the responsibility as acting administrator for the Federal Transit Administration just within the last few days. And she is replacing former administrator Fernandez, and she has served as a deputy administrator since May of 2022 in this organization, and she joined them as a senior advisor, FTA, back in August of 2021. Veronica is a native of the Bronx and lived for a period of time in Westchester County, was a constituent, and I had the pleasure of talking with her about transportation issues in those days. But she has gone big time. This is no longer the the assemblyman talking about something. This is a nationwide responsibility, and she comes very well schooled by all of her different work. She's been involved in advocacy in a host of different areas, and really brings an understanding, certainly of this region, to her responsibilities and the needs that she has. We're very happy to have her with us today, and her experience gives us a tremendous person of competence and ability in the Biden administration. So our first speaker, Veronica Vanderpool.
Good morning. It is nice to be back home. I want to first start by thanking Commissioner Dominguez, County Executive Latimer, Executive Director Levine for inviting us to share our remarks and a little bit about our work in DC, but also our federal funding efforts in the New York metro region. But I do also want to start by shouting out our very talented team in the region, led by Michael Culata. He is our Region 2 Administrator over here at the end. And though this isn't new news, I do want to offer my congratulations in this forum because Mike was actually named our Regional Administrator in January. And he took over in the role from Steve Goodman, who's also here with us today, and we'll be celebrating Steve a little later today. Steve, many of you have worked with for many years, and you've also worked with Mike and our team in the region, very talented team. So I can never start any remarks without shouting out the skills and the brilliance of our team here in New York City and the region. So as has been pointed out, I have taken on a new role, and it is incredible to be behind the podium here talking with you all because, like many of you, I was on the other side talking to the dais and talking about the importance of transit and transportation in this region. And I'm very fortunate to be able to draw on my experiences as an advocate as a native New Yorker, as a transit user and rider, as someone who's worked in state government, who's represented cities and suburban, and recently rural communities when I was working in Delaware, and now bringing all of that perspective into this role at the federal government. The federal government is an important partner with our states and local municipalities. We cannot see the impact of our investment or our funding or our work without the leadership of our metropolitan planning organizations, without the visions of our governors and our commissioners and our mayors and our county executives and our local and appointed officials. You all are the individuals who make the progress happen, who make the success happen. The federal government is a partner. And we have a lot of money. We do have, a big purse to support that progress and to support that work. But we can't get it done without the vision and the leadership of those that we have represented here. FTA's mission is to improve America's communities through public transportation. So we connect communities, and I loved what Commissioner Dominguez said about connecting and reconnecting. We make investments to make sure that our communities are connected to each other, but that really we're connecting people to what matters. And this region is incredibly important. We know the stats. $7 trillion of economic activity, 7% of GDP is in this region, is generated by this region. And transit and transportation are big factors, leading factors in that GDP. I want to talk a little bit about federal funding. So we are in an unprecedented, historic moment with the bipartisan infrastructure law. Particularly for FTA, Federal Transit Administration, our budget increased from $13 billion to $21 billion. That's a 60% increase. And with that came 4 new grant programs. So we are helping transit systems replace their rail vehicles. We're providing better ferry service. We are ensuring that there's accessibility in our train stations, particularly important for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority, MTA. As we know, 26% of rail stations are accessible. This funding will help move that percentage higher. We at Federal Transit have dispersed $7 billion in COVID relief funds. That is a significant amount of money. And with those funds, our transit systems in this region stayed afloat. They continue to provide the services and the jobs that we all relied on during the pandemic and, of course, today. We've also signed 15 capital investment grant programs. And you may not know what that term means. Those around the table certainly are very familiar with CIG. But you do know if you're riding on 2nd Avenue subway. You do know if you're riding Canarsie. You do know if you cross over the Port of North Bridge. Those are projects that have been funded with FTA's Capital Investment Grants Program. And we've signed 15 of those agreements to advance those projects in 3 years. We've also signed the largest to date full funding grants agreement for the next phase of the 2nd Avenue subway. $3.4 billion in federal funding will be going toward extending 2nd Avenue from 96th to 125th Street. In fact, I had just started on the MTA board in 2016 when Phase 1 opened. So it's so important for me to have this experience and this perspective in this role at FTA now. We're moving on another big project, the Hudson River Tunnel, which is part of the Gateway package of projects. And that is another project within FTA's pipeline of projects. 66 projects are in this pipeline. And these are the projects that support bus rapid transit across the country, support rail investments, support expansions of transit hubs. Significant amount of attention is going to mobility, to moving people around differently in this country. And an interesting statistic for you, of the 66 of those projects in the pipeline, more than half are bus rapid transit projects. So we're seeing communities embrace BRT in in a way that is unprecedented and with the support of the federal government. We've all heard about the Hudson River Tunnel, and that is a key connector between New York and New Jersey, but it's so important to the entire Northeast corridor, which is why this has been a signature project of President Biden and his administration. It's a long-delayed project. I was in advocacy in 2010 when the previous project, Access to the Regions Core, was canceled. So here we are 14 years later, still talking about moving this forward, but we're closer, right? This is not an idea anymore. This is something that's moving to fruition. I want to applaud and commend our partners in this region for their vision that has led to successful receipt of federal funds. This region has gotten RAISE grants, mega grants, many highway grants, and my colleague Administrator Bott will talk about this in a little bit. It's due to the vision. It's due to what the needs of this region want and have been asking for. FTA has also been investing in new technology and green technology. So we have put nearly $5 billion toward low and no emission buses, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law. And this is only possible because we got such a significant increase in funding. So that means nearly 3,000 buses will be in our communities that are cleaner and greener. That's equity. That also means we are addressing our climate mitigation goals. It also means that we're supporting workforce development, because with that funding is a mandatory 5% requirement that transit agencies invest in workforce development, because it's important to make sure that as we in the federal government are supporting these investments, we're supporting our workforce too. We want to make sure that those operators and mechanics and other skilled trade people have the skills to move into this transition of new technology. And the MTA has been incredibly successful in receiving federal funding for these buses, particularly battery electric buses. And they're also launching a very comprehensive workforce training program. In fact, we heard County Executive Latimer talk about the investment in Westchester County, 106 hybrid buses last year. That's 88% of the fleet. And that's incredibly important to communities and individuals who rely on public transportation, and those who never step on a bus, because it means that the vehicles that are on the road are emitting fewer pollutants. Thanks again to the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's not just the money that we're handing out, it's the technical assistance. There's a new office called the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation that provides free TA, technical assistance, to transit agencies and others who need help in making these transitions to these greener fleets. And in fact, there's been a significant effort in this administration on technical assistance. If you go to the US DOT website, you'll see a DOT navigator, and you'll see information on how, if you're an advocate, if you're a small organization, if you're a large transit agency, how are you successful at winning these federal funds? So there's been a significant amount of attention and energy and some resource to supporting the technical assistance. I want to talk a little bit about how transit agencies and state departments of transportation have been creative with the provision of transit service. So we've heard during the pandemic that many transit systems needed to rethink how they were providing service. They needed to redesign routes. They needed to talk and respond to their customers differently than they may have in the past. And in some systems, when they've done that, they've seen an increase in ridership. So you would think, oh, this is not a good time to redesign service. It was an excellent time for many systems to redesign service, because it looked at what was needed in the community and shifted demand and provision of service based on the changes in housing and workforce. In fact, Suffolk County did that. They redesigned their bus routes. And in the first 2 months of having done that, they saw ridership increase 13%. I want to talk a little bit about safety. So safety is a key goal and focus at the Department of Transportation. If you ever heard our Secretary Buttigieg, talk about safety, you'll hear him say, it's the North Star. And my predecessor, Administrator Nuria Fernandez, also talked about that. it's incredibly important that we talk about, number one, the safety of our transit workers, particularly those who are operating vehicles. We've seen a 121% increase in assaults on transit workers. And particularly in the big cities, such as New York City, we've seen an unprecedented number of assaults. What FTA is doing is taking a number of steps to let the industry know we're paying very close attention to this. One of them is we've issued what's known as a general directive. That's just two fancy words that say, you have to do this, industry, because we can do that at the Federal Transit Administration. We can tell transit agencies and state departments of transportation what to do on safety. And we've said, you must complete a risk assessment and you must identify the mitigations that keep your operators safe, your workers safe. And issuing a general directive is no small thing. It's the first time we're actually saying this is a national level hazard, and you must address this. I want to talk a little bit about safety on our roadways. So here in New York City, we've had Vision Zero since Commissioner Trottenberg and Mayor de Blasio have put that forth. But their predecessors, under Jeanette Sadiq-Khan, had been thinking about how we reduce fatalities and serious injuries on our roadway. Under the Department of Transportation, we have the National Roadway Safety Strategy, which for the very first time at federal government, the vision is zero. Zero. It's not dancing around reduced fatalities and reduced serious injuries. It's saying we must get to zero. And this is where my advocacy comes in, where I was working with so many of you in the audience and around the table to make sure that we had the policies at the local level, the state level, and now at the federal level that make that a priority. I want to talk a little bit about the fiscal cliff. The fiscal cliff is a situation that transit agencies around the country are experiencing because of reduced operating revenue during COVID and during the pandemic. And there has been a lot of requests to the federal government for support and attention to this issue. And we recognize the COVID money that the federal government had given out is running out or has run out for most systems. And that's a challenge, because what that's saying is transit agencies have to make the tough decisions. Either they have to cut service or raise fares, or they have to find new sources of revenue. And I'm encouraged to see some of the steps that have been put forward. For most of my days in advocacy, particularly around New York MTA, there was always an operating deficit. But last year, Governor Hochul stepped in and proposed a $1.1 billion annual additional revenue for the MTA. I just heard earlier this week that Governor Murphy in New Jersey has made a proposal for operating for NJ Transit. The governors in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts have also done the same. And that's important because, again, the federal government, we're a partner. We are not the sole funder of your transit systems. We need the championship of the local elected officials and the state elected officials. And our investments are only as good as the sustainable, resilient planning that you all do, that is done around this table here. And transit-oriented development is one way that we see that occurring. So Federal Transit Administration, we invest annually in a pilot planning program. We've given about $14 million to communities around the country to invest in transit-oriented development. But we did something different this year. So in our Notice of Funding Opportunity, known as a NOFO, last year, we actually prioritized affordable housing. And we said, applicants, if you want to be most competitive for our funding, you must address 3 of these 5 affordable housing metrics, if you will. And if you do, instead of receiving 80% of federal funds, you'll get 100% of federal funds. So we're signaling that it's important to marry transit investments and affordable housing. I want to quickly touch on a rule that we are working in tandem with our partners at Federal Highways, the planning rule. I know that is very familiar to our colleagues here at NYMTC. And with the planning rule, we are working to update coordination and data streamlining and make sure that there strengthens public involvement. And we should be releasing that rule sometime this year. I can't wrap up until I talk a little bit about project delivery. So there's a lot of attention on how these projects in cities and around the country are built, the time they take, the budgets that are responsible for getting these projects out the door. And there's been a good deal of attention from our secretary on this. In fact, there is a new USDOT Center for Project Excellence in Project Delivery. With toolkits and resources, FTA works with our grantees on a construction roundtable where we bring all the construction folks together from around the country for projects that we support to talk about challenges and lessons learned. And this is incredibly important because if projects are not getting done on time, you're not going to get the federal funds that are assigned to you, because Congress does put an obligation date by which funds need to be expended into grants that you receive. So it's incredibly important for us to guide that along. So today we actually released, FTA released our $9.9 billion in formula funds. $1.25 billion is coming to the New York Metro, and that's for a 5-month period, just because we're under a continuing resolution, because we still don't have a past fiscal year 24 budget. But it just goes to show you the magnitude of investment that's coming into the region. And then coupled with the local and state resources, this is how we get these projects done. So I want to wrap up by just sharing with you something that I read this morning. It was a very negative piece, commentary about public transportation. And it said that the reason we're in, as a country, this fiscal situation is because of our investments in EV technology and public transportation. And it said public transportation is 20th century mode of mobility. Because when you make those investments, the author contended, you don't really get a good return on investment. Those of us in this room, in this region, know better. We know that this region thrives on sustainable, interconnected mobility. We know this region thrives on public transportation, which is why we continue to support the advancement of new revenue sources and the investment in bike and pedestrian infrastructure and traffic congestion and management and demand management, because we know that investment in public transportation matters. We know that there's a return on investment. We know that's a good story, particularly in this region. So we are in a tough environment, though, because transit has been struggling. So it's important that you continue to be the champions for these systems, to be the champions of your elected and appointed officials who are putting ideas forth, because we know that public transportation is 21st century mobility, and it's our responsibility to continue to move that forward. So I want to thank you all for your time and for your attention, and thank you all for the invitation to be here.
Thank you very much, Administrator Vanderpool. We are so very fortunate to have you in your leadership position at USDOT. Your passion, your knowledge, certainly of our area in particular. We are so fortunate to have you there. You're going to see a theme here with our speakers. Not only are they knowledgeable about their areas and their leadership responsibilities, but they come with a depth of experience, frontline experience in transportation, in transit, in administering these very, very large programs. And that's certainly true of our next speaker. We are very fortunate to also have with us Administrator for the Federal Highway Administration, Shaylin Bott. Shaylin is, I will say, a seasoned, and I'm going to put this into context, as well as a seasoned transportation official. He has led teams across the country. He has served in a leadership position as commissioner, director, not probably getting the title wrong here, in Colorado, in Delaware. He's led state operations at the highest, most functional level. He comes to his job knowing exactly how states operate, how local governments operate. You started, I believe, in Kentucky. There is so much wealth of experience coming to the table between our partners here at Federal Highway and Federal Transit. We are very, very fortunate. That said, he is now delivering in a way that is just phenomenal. In his role at Federal Highway Administration, he now has oversight over all 50 states, U.S. territories, and the District of Columbia, administering more than $350 billion as part of President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law. That's both formula funds, competitive grant opportunities, and the programs that are associated with that, for state departments of transportation, for MPOs, for local governments, tribes, territories, everyone involved in transportation. He has a passion for safety. We also know he has a passion for innovation and technology, and we are very fortunate to have him at the FHWA. So with that, Administrator Bott, welcome to New York.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and when you said I was seasoned, I was just trying to think of what secret seasonings I would put, in there, and then I was like, oh, I think she means old. Man. Well, thank you very much, and I just want to, in the interest of time, Veronica mentioned delivery, and we always want to say on time and on budget. I just want to make sure that maybe I'll truncate some of my remarks so we can get us back, because I know public involvement comes after my remarks, and that's always the most important part of these meetings. But it is an honor to be here. I've actually addressed NYMTC before. I think Veronica was actually on the stage or on the dais as part of New York City leadership at that time. And it is incredibly important. Veronica was talking about the 20th century. Oh, and before I do, I want to recognize Rick Marquis, who has been a great leader, along with all of our Federal Highway staff here. He's been a great leader for New York. He's actually been in a few states for us, and he's been a personal leader, at least particularly from a hairstyle perspective. I follow his leadership closely, very closely. He's seasoned as well. So Veronica talked about 20th century transit from this very enlightened author this morning. That's the dumbest thing I've heard so far today, but it's early, so I don't want to get too far ahead. But just I'm a huge history buff, and just even in the room and the space that we're in, right? The Alexander Hamilton Customs House. I mean, this is one of the founders of our country who was a staunch believer in infrastructure spending, right? I think created the first infrastructure bank and co-wrote with James Madison the Federalist Papers that talked about how infrastructure, and infrastructure at that time in the 18th century would have been, roads and canals and bridges were foundational for a young country that was just beginning to evolve. And so I just think it's just amazing that somebody would think that in New York City, that transit would be viewed as a 20th century technology when it's obviously critical to running most of our large cities and even rural areas and suburban areas as well. We've just got to do it in a 21st century manner as we go forward. My first job in transportation was in the city of Toronto. I grew up in Canada and did my first job in Toronto. A little bit of similarity to New York City. And my job was transportation demand management, right? Try to get people out of single occupant vehicle trips to take transit, active transportation, ride sharing. And everybody was like, that is a great idea. Get everybody else to do that so I can drive with no traffic to my office. I was like, that's not how that works. But if you visited Toronto recently, we were not successful in reducing single occupant vehicle trips. There's just a huge amount of congestion, but I also view like congestion is a sign of a thriving area, right? Like if you have no congestion and no traffic in your area, you probably have some economic challenges. And you know, the commissioner was talking about just all of the importance of the economy in this region. And I say this a lot when I go across the country from the bipartisan infrastructure law, but you know, this region is the beating heart for this nation. And so, you know, the fact that there is vitality here, that there is so much interest and so much commerce going on is incredibly important. My second job in transportation was running an MPO similar size to, you know, the NYMTC one, the Bowling Green, Warren County, Kentucky MPO. You know, we're just right there, you know, just slightly under. We had the, you know, the Corvette Museum there and Western Kentucky University, similar drivers to some of the tourist attractions you might find in this region. But I do think from a planning perspective, and I just love all of the important work because, you know, in hearing the history of the commissioners' stories about taking the ferry into the city and things, and that was what transportation represented then, the importance of this organization to set the agenda for the 21st century as you reach out and envision what this region will look like, and more importantly, how people and goods will flow in the 21st century is incredibly important. And so I'm always grateful for when the public shows up to these meetings and when elected officials and appointed officials come together, because I mean, that is the future and what it looks like. And I'll just say that for all of my time in transportation, whether it was Secretary of Transportation in Delaware or in Colorado, you know, or in the private sector, all of my time in transportation has been this idea of if only we had funding, we could build these great projects. If only we had, oh, are you giving me the hook, or am I not close enough?
No, you're good. This is the clicker for that presentation.
Oh, that's okay. I'll skip the presentation. I'm good, thank you. I was like, what do they call it? Like you know, am I getting the Bronx cheer here? Like, you know, like, man, like New York, that's a tough market, you know? But thank you though. So he was very polite. I just wasn't used to like people approaching me when I'm doing the thing and like, all right, you gots to go. So I do think as you look out and think of like how we're actually going to move transportation. I mean, I don't know who wrote this article, but I don't know how you do transportation in New York City if you get rid of all the transit and say everybody you're going to get in a car or you know, find some other way to get around. Like that just, you know, that dog just doesn't hunt, as we used to say in Kentucky. And I'll say this, you know, from a funding perspective though, when I was in Delaware, I was on the Northeast Corridor Commission, and you know, Gateway, you know, or ARC or whatever, you know, at the time was that project. They were like, we're never going to have the funds for it. You know, we need $10 billion to build one tunnel, and we need $50 billion. And Joan and I think and I worked together on that, but we need $50 billion just to get some of the hand-cranked bridges, you know, over the Susquehanna and others, you know, and then we wanted high-speed rail, and it was like hundreds of billions of dollars. And we're like, we're never going to find that kind of funding. Well, thanks to President Biden and the bipartisan infrastructure law, that funding is a reality. Last year I came and I think I represented the governor at the Moles dinner, and Secretary Buttigieg and Deputy Secretary Trottenberg were in New York City announcing the funding for the tunnel, and I was just trying to make sure that former Governor Christie wasn't in the back shouting, no, you know, not gonna let that happen. But it's great. It's great to see that, you know, we're actually going to build that project, and Secretary Buttigieg is very focused on delivery of these projects and making sure that they happen. And so, you know, I just think that, you know, we heard earlier about what the public expects us to do as the government, right? So whether it was, you know, the founders of this country or the elected officials today, I think the public, and they don't care whether you're a federal official, a state official, or a local official, they brand us all under the term of government. And that's not usually a term of endearment. But they do have an expectation that if we get funding, we're going to turn it into projects. Now, the bipartisan infrastructure law, $1.2 trillion, about a quarter of that flowing through the Federal Highway Administration. I think New York State's going to get about $13.6 billion in formula funds. There's been a bunch of discretionary funding that has come through. So whether it's the Kensington Parkway, the BQE, which I rode in on last night, I'm going to ride out and check out. I know that's we do tend to have some like public interest in these projects that we want to do. I was working out this morning and I saw that the first public meeting is tonight on congestion pricing. Hopefully my flight gets me out before that one occurs. It's just my experience in building projects across the country that, when you try to do things at the public meetings, most people don't show up to say attaboy or attagirl. There are people who come up with very passionate opinions, and we welcome that. We want that. That is part of the NEPA process, but it is going to take big solutions to solve the big challenges that are in this region. And, the two things that I want to talk about, too, before I wrap up here, I think resiliency is another challenge for the 21st century that we've never had before. Commissioner and I were up in Kingston, New York, dedicating one of the first electric vehicles. I guess that's also a 20th century technology for this person. EV chargers that are being rolled out through the bipartisan infrastructure law. We're getting sued as the federal government for putting out a GHG measure that said we're not asking people to reduce, we're just asking people to start to set a goal of reducing their GHG emissions. And a bunch of states said thank you, and a bunch of states sued us, which is maybe emblematic of the country today. But, I was the secretary in Delaware when Hurricane Irene hit, and then Superstorm Sandy the next year. We actually sent our buses up to New Jersey Transit because they had been so badly impacted by operations. I mean, red states, blue states, purple states, we as the Federal Highway Administration have put out over $1 billion just in the last year and a half in climate-related emergency funding requests. And so when I was in Colorado, we talked about climate change in Denver and Boulder. And when I would go out to the rest of the state, which was much redder, they would talk about resilience. Whatever you call it, the infrastructure that was built in the, some cases, 18th, 19th, 20th centuries in our country is not designed to handle the precipitation rates, the climate-fueled storms that are occurring. And so we're really excited about the PROTECT program that came out of the bipartisan infrastructure law, which means for the first time, Democrats and Republicans voted for a climate title in the transportation bill. It's about $7.4 billion. We'll be making some discretionary grants, but I would encourage, I know the state is looking at that, the city is looking at that, but we and this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is a challenge for all Americans. If we have this transportation asset that is worth trillions of dollars in this country, we cannot continue to build infrastructure the way we have in the 20th century. And I'll close on safety. And I do put climate change under the safety umbrella. We often talk about 43,000 deaths on American roadways and how that is our incredible challenge. But when you look at storms like Hurricane Ian and all of the evacuation that occurs and the deaths that are associated with that, that will be a challenge for us as the public and the private sector to deal with in the 21st century. But one of the things that I loved working with then Commissioner, now Deputy Secretary Trottenberg on, and we were Obama appointees together at USDOT, was just that focus on safety. I know when she was the commissioner here, she would always talk about Vision Zero and I think the 5 years or whatever it was that you guys were seeing great rates. I think as a nation, when I was at DOT in 2010, we hit 30,000 fatalities on American roadways, and we were cautiously optimistic that we were going to get well on our way towards zero, as they said at the time. And in the intervening decade plus, we went the exact opposite way. 43,000 deaths on American roadways. I was looking at the NYMTC region, and it's sort of emblematic of much of the country, right? We have highways that go through here, and we have high-speed crashes that are occurring there. We have suburban areas where we have these roads that are highways at times, but they're also streets where, you know, people live, and we've got to figure out what we do on these arterials. And then we have city streets where, you know, we shouldn't be going, you know, over 20 miles an hour in many of these places. And particularly in this area and also nationwide, we're seeing a huge increase in vulnerable road user deaths. Bicyclists, pedestrians. I think you guys have actually had a decent downturn in bicycle fatalities, but pedestrians are up nationwide. Last week, I think I was at an NRSS National Roadway Safety Strategy meeting, and I met with this gentleman named Daniel Langenkamp. His wife, Sarah Langenkamp, was a State Department employee, award-winning State Department employee, and was killed on her bicycle just north of Washington, D.C., returning from biking their, I think, 8-year-old son at the time to school. And Daniel talks about how the loss of their mother from their family, for the 2 boys, for him, it's just created this massive hole in their family. So when we talk about 43,000 deaths on America roadways, that is 43,000 mothers, fathers, children, loved ones that we are ripping out of the fabric of families, our society. We can't continue to do it. We think we've started to see the first turn, the first downturn away from the COVID highs of 44,000 and 43,000, but I am just a firm believer. I've spent a lot of my time at the intersection of technology and transportation, that, you know, whether it's safer speeds, safer roadways, safer design, but also deploying technology at scale. I'm just a firm believer that in my lifetime, we can achieve that goal of 0 deaths on American roadways. And so we encourage you to use that as sort of your North Star with these bipartisan infrastructure law funds, whether they're highway funds or transit funds, to be that piece that says we finally, in our lifetimes, we've done amazing things as a nation. We've conquered lots of things, and my daughters are 8 and 10, and I hope someday when they're older, they're like, remember when Dad used to talk about or go on and on about how people died on American roadways, and that just doesn't happen anymore. I really think that's possible. So thank you very much for what you do. Thank you very much for your passion about transportation and infrastructure, and just an honor to be here today. Thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you again to both of our speakers. With that, I'm going to open it up to our panel here. If anybody has any questions for either the FTA administrator or FHWA administrator from the dais. Any questions? You've wowed them to silence. Thank you all very, very much. We greatly appreciate it. I'll take one indulgence moment to explain my seasoned comment, and that is in the meeting right before this, Chairman Jano Lieber from the MTA and I go back away, and he kindly reminded us that he and I worked together in the 90s, actually. One of our first jobs was actually to implement ICE-T, which was the revolutionary and fundamental bill that transformed surface transportation as we know it in this country through transportation reauthorization. And he was at Federal Transit. I was in the Secretary's office at USDOT. And it was our job to figure out how to make it work. And what was really different was that it really merged through the vision of New York Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the vision of actually making sure that highway and transit came together in a way that had never been done in this country before. And what we're seeing today through both of your speeches and the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure legislation and the enhancement of the MPO planning process across the board through the work that we're doing at NYMTC and other MPOs around the country is the evolution of all of that. And it really is quite significant what's been done in this country. And New York is literally the shining example of that. And I'll say that without any hesitation. And how we do that here through our planning process at NYMTC. Well, those were great slides. I know. I just saw a speed up of that. All of which to say, let me turn this over to County Executive Latimer.
We now enter the stage where we have public participation by those who are in attendance. I assume that you have registered on a first-come, first-served basis. And if you've done so already, we're ready to begin to those remarks. Remarks should be limited, ideally, to no more than 3 minutes. I don't know who has the list of names to read off, but
We have one.
do we just open it up to the microphone and people just come up?
We have one speaker
You do have-
registered.
Okay, thank you. Me?
I gotta stand up. I learned a lot today. I learned that my generation, the older generation, has to give up to the gentleman who just spoke there with 2 young children. He understands that the changes and what we've done all our lives doesn't work today. I have to confront you, Commissioner. I've been talking about what's wrong on the roads in this area for 30 years. Nothing happened. It's time for you to retire and hire somebody like that who understands with young children to follow the law as currently written. Your department has not. I spent 30 years explaining what was wrong with the law. Nothing happened. I'll be 91 in June. I'm here for one reason. Person-to-person contact works. It's the best way to solve a problem, face-to-face. You've been here too long. I've written your department, it's there in all your files. Time for you to leave, and somebody like that gentleman with young children comes in here and does what has to be done. The rules are the rules. Some of them are right, some of them are wrong. But they're not being enforced. And it's getting worse with the automatic drivers. You need to know that yellow's on the left and white's on the right. You redesigned Thornwood, completely wrong. Okay, Joan, I'd like to meet with your department and discuss what's going on and how Westchester can go forward. It's time that my generation got off the scene, and it's time for his generation to take over. We've made a lot of mistakes, but the world changed. I'll be 91 in June. I got an electric wheelchair up on the top of the stairs because I can't get around. I can walk up and down slowly. My mind's going. I'm making mistakes. This is a time for the younger generation, not for my generation. Those of you who can't change and are not flexible, retire, go to Florida. 30 seconds. After 90 years, almost 91 years, I can take 30 seconds and enjoy it. I can't leave without thanking all of those people who have taken the time to teach me what I know. I'm not that smart. There's a whole group, especially here at NYMTC, they've helped me, and everywhere else. Thank you all for helping me. I hope I see you next year. Probably not. Thank you all.
We have no more registered speakers.
That closes our public participation, and I gather I'll turn it back to Commissioner Dominguez. Oh, I'm sorry. Do I go to the next one? All right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So I guess we'll begin with the action items on the agenda. We have what appears to be 6 action items before us. All material related to these action items have been posted on the NYMTC website, www.nymtc.org. The first action is to accept the February 23rd, 2023 meeting synopsis. As we move through the action items, I request that all voting members announce your name and the agency you represent when you make a motion or second a motion. So with that, may I have a motion to accept the February 23rd, 2023 meeting synopsis?
Stephen Powers from Rockland County makes the motion.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Ken Arnold, Nassau County, second the motion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Does anyone object to the motion? Hearing no objections, the meeting synopsis is accepted. Thank you. Commissioner?
All right. Next, let's move into resolutions. Before us, we have Resolution 2024-1, adoption of the state fiscal year 2024-2025 Unified Plan Work Program. With that, let me introduce Setu Allen of NYMTC staff, who's going to present an overview of the UPWP.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this will just be a brief overview of the Unified Planning Work Program, which will be the work program for state fiscal year 2024-2025, April 1st, 2024 through March 31st, 2025. So first off, what is the Unified Planning Work Program? The Unified Planning Work Program serves as NYMTC's annual budget, and it describes how the NYMTC will use federal transportation planning funds for transportation planning activities within the NYMTC planning area. Like most of NYMTC's products, it is guided by the shared goals that are defined in NYMTC's long-range plan, Regional Transportation Plan. The current plan is Plan 2050 moving forward, and those goals and associated objectives include goals related to safety and security, reliable and easy travel, planning for changing demand, reducing environmental impacts, and also resiliency. So the Unified Planning Work Program can be thought of as having two parts. The first part is a core program, which relates to the work that the MPO is required to do as a part of its overall operations. And this includes things like developing regional transportation plans, which define the long-range needs of the area. It also involves the annual, for NYMTC, development of Unified Planning Work Programs, through which the MPO can define potential transportation improvements for the region. It also includes the development of transportation improvement programs, also called TIPs, and these are programs of projects, and within these listings, we define the schedule and funding for projects proposed for federal funding. In addition, NYMTC does various analyses to try to understand the congestion impacts, as well as the air quality impacts of the projects, programs, and studies programmed within the plan and the TIP. And I should add, for the upcoming state fiscal year, as well as bleeding into the next fiscal year, NYMTC's one of its biggest priorities will be the development of the next plan, the RTP, or rather Regional Transportation Plan, moving forward through federal fiscal years 2025, as well as the development of the next Transportation Improvement Program, which will cover federal fiscal years 2026 through 2030. In addition to all these efforts, it also eventually leads to the implementation of improvements within the planning area. So in addition to that core program, NYMTC also funds a discretionary program, and these are projects and studies programmed for inclusion in the UPWP that allow the member agencies to expand the scope of the planning process in a way that addresses more local needs, but also considers, or rather is consistent with the goals and objectives in the long-range plan. So in terms of the upcoming work program, there are nearly 50 discretionary programs proposed for funding in the work program, and most of those studies are funded, or rather managed, by the member agencies, although some are managed by NYMTC staff. And there are several themes that emerged. So there's a focus on safety activities, studies related to freight activities in the region, as well as various sub-area studies all across the NYMTC planning area, data collection, which obviously greatly informs all of the decision-making at NYMTC, as well as a focus on developing studies to recommend transit improvements for the NYMTC planning area. So in terms of the 24-25 work program, roughly $65 million of federal funding and local share have been programmed within the UPWP. Roughly 30 of that is new funding from our federal partners at the FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, as well as the Federal Transit Administration. And also some of that is local contribution from the member agencies. Of the funding, of that $65 million, roughly 65% goes to fund NYMTC staff activities, but about 35% is passed through to the member agencies, and most of that funding that is passed through to the member agencies is going to fund discretionary projects that have been proposed by those agencies to expand the scope of the planning process for this region. So just a really brief presentation on the proposed work program. I'd like to give a thanks to the entirety of NYMTC staff, for it's really their collective knowledge and experience that leads to the development of this program. Also, I'd like to thank the member agency staff for their contributions to this work program, and also some of my direct colleagues who are most directly involved in the development and management of the work program, which includes my colleagues Jumi Lee, Milton LaPerena, as well as Kimberly Estes and Joy Britton. So thanks to the member agencies and also thanks to the staff. And at this time, NYMTC staff would request that you please adopt the 24-25 Unified Planning Work Program.
Thank you very much, Setu. Greatly appreciate that comprehensive overview. At this point in time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the state fiscal plan for the UPWP. Do I have a motion?
Motion, Jack Schmidt, New York City Department of City Planning.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, Barbara Gross at Putnam County.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, with that, we'll follow a roll call vote, starting with the Lower Hudson Valley, Putnam County, Rockland County, Westchester, Long Island, Nassau County, Suffolk County, New York City Department of Transportation, New York City Department of City Planning, MTA, New York State Department of Transportation. Aye. Okay. Thank you all very, very much. The motion passes. And with that, we have an additional resolution. Congratulations, Adam and the NYMTC team, for getting the UPWP. I know it's timely, so that's good. Thank you all for your efforts. Next, we have Resolution 2024-2, which is my honor to recognize Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone. Steve served as the principal member and former co-chair of NYMTC, and we are very, very grateful for his service. We were in discussion this morning in the principals meeting, and we were talking about all the work that's been done in Suffolk County. And during his 12 years of service, he was not only has been a very active member of the council, but also providing a regional vision to NYMTC as he really worked with his team in Suffolk County to shape the future of transportation in such a very significantly large metropolitan area like Suffolk County. So we have a resolution rather to honor Steve Bellone for all of his work during his time in service to Suffolk County, and certainly in time in service to NYMTC. He's been a partner across the board. I've had the pleasure to work with him for many years, and we wish him well in all that is his pursuits as he moves forward, but we greatly appreciate his service on NYMTC, and I'll offer it to his counterpart here, County Executive Latimer, if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Yes, I had the great opportunity to work with Steve during my 6+ years as county executive. He preceded me in the position and was a mentor to me. I can't tell you how many times I picked up the phone to give him a call. We worked together in projects that may not relate to transportation, but group buying services that we were able to partner Westchester with Suffolk, and I found him to be just a very open, easy person to work with. Most of us in public life have difficult perceptions and reputations, but Steve was as smart and as nice a fellow as you'd want to meet, and I consider him a personal friend. This resolution, I'm sorry he's not here to hear the praise, but this resolution I think properly recognizes him for his work, and while I assume that someone else will want to make the motion, I'll be happy to second it at the right time.
All right. It's perfect opportunity. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution honoring Steve Ballone, former county executive of Suffolk County? Oh, all right, Suffolk County. Thank you.
Seconded, George Latimer, Westchester.
Wonderful. Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Steve Ballone, for your service. We greatly appreciate it. And with that, I want to begrudgingly offer another resolution, and that is recognition of service for my co-chair for NYMTC, Westchester County Executive George Latimer. Did I? Okay. Can I do this one? All right. I want to say a huge thanks to County Executive Latimer. You heard him in his opening remarks, his depth of knowledge, having worked in public service at all levels of government, is very significant. And what he's brought to the table, certainly in terms of NYMTC, is literally understanding what people want and what they need, and how to actually service citizens and constituents. And that is actually incredibly important, because when you marry knowledge, experience, and a know-how and can-do capability, he has an incredible team behind him, but his service in NYMTC has truly been very much appreciated. And we have a resolution honoring you for your service and greatly appreciate your time with us. You mentioned this morning that you're termed out as county executive, but we know your dedication to public service lives on, and you leave a legacy of achievement, and we greatly appreciate all of that. So we look forward to continuing to work with you on this council moving forward. And with that, may I have a motion to adopt the resolution honoring, or if anybody else wants to speak on behalf of County Executive Latimer.
Stephen Powers from Rockland County moves that resolution.
Do I have a second?
Second, Jack Schmidt, New York City Department of City Planning.
Thank you very much. Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes. Congratulations, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
We have an additional resolution honoring a former principal of NYMTC, and that is former FTA Regional Administrator Steve Goodman. Steve, NYMTC really wants to express our appreciation for your dedicated service. You retired from the federal government with a very long, distinguished career in federal service at USDOT. You have lived through a lot of the planning exercises that have gone on here in the region for many years. You were a critical force behind so many of the incredible transit investments that we've had in the entire New York region, and we are incredibly grateful for your service. I want to open it up because I know there are others that want to say a few things in terms of the incredible effort that you've put forward. Anything else? Mike?
Can I say something?
Yes, you may.
As the new regional administrator, the successor to Steve Goodman, Steve, I just wanted to congratulate you on the recognition today, and also you've had such a lasting impact on the region through your work with September 11th recovery, through your work with Hurricane Sandy recovery, through your leadership as the regional administrator, and most recently through your leadership in helping to deliver critical COVID funding to help this region fight and respond to the pandemic. You've been such a great mentor and friend to many of us in the room today, myself included. You've been such a great personal friend to me. I can't thank you enough. And I just wish you the continued success with this next chapter. I'm going to miss seeing you. I miss seeing you walking around the halls upstairs on the 4th floor of this building. But I just wish you all the best, and congratulations to you.
Thank you very much. I can say that when I took this position on as Commissioner of New York State DOT, one of the first people that I had the chance to meet with was with Steve Goodman and the perspective that he brings to the table, having served in the region for so long, is truly incredible. And Michael gave you a flavor for some of the incredible things that he's done to put not only emergency situations to rest, but also literally providing a level of service to New Yorkers that's just really unprecedented. So, Steve, we wish you the best. This is only the end of one chapter. The window is open, and we know that you're thriving elsewhere. Oh, excuse me. But I do want to say congratulations, and I know that there's one more additional commenter from the dais here, your fellow partner at the Federal Highway Administration, Rick Markey.
I would be remiss if I didn't say something, Steve. It's a very special relationship between the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. And as you know, I've worked with other regional offices around the country. And it was a little over 5 years ago, actually, that I came to New York. And I want to say it was just before the annual meeting 5 years ago that we met face-to-face. We had a great conversation. And it only got better from that. I really appreciate all the times that I reached out for counsel, whether it was working with our different partners. I really enjoyed working with you, and I really miss you very much, and I know we're going to stay in touch. So very best to you, Steve.
All right, with that, anyone else? All right, may I have a motion to adopt this resolution honoring Steve Goodman? Thank you, Barbara. May I have a second?
Second, Ken Arnold, Nassau County.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, the motion passes. Steve, congratulations. I'd like to offer you the mic.
Well, first of all, thank you for those very kind words. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everything NYMTC does every single day for public transportation. I have to say, when I came in, muscle memory, I started walking up to the dais and I took a seat over there where Mike Collada is sitting now. And he politely escorted me to my seat over there, which turned out to be okay, because what I learned from this experience is that when I was up here, I would hear a lot of the transportation discussion. But when I was over there, I heard so much more. I heard the co-chair talking about plumbing and flushing toilets. And I realized that if I'm going to participate in this type of a setting, I'm going to get a lot more than I was getting out of before when I was actually sitting on the dais. And I don't mean that in a bad way. But I also want to say that this is a very special recognition in this place, because I worked in this building for 15 years supporting public transportation. And of course, I have the FTA family with us today and celebrating in that recognition, and I really, really appreciate that. And of course, we have the acting Federal Transit Administrator, Veronica Vanderpool, with us, which is a personal friend. I'm so excited for her. And the other thing I wanted to note is that so important in this process, I want to thank the public showing up, spending time with this committee, really helping shape public transportation in New York and in the region. It really is important. That participation is really important. And I'm so proud of the things that we've all accomplished together. We've given millions of people better access to public transportation, and we're connecting communities. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I really appreciate this recognition. Thank you.
Wait, Steve, can we invite DFT Administrator Michael? Take a quick picture. confirm our incoming co-chair. Per the memorandum of understanding for the council, the co-chair is rotated annually among the 3 NYMTC transportation coordinating committees. Last year, the co-chair was selected from the Mid-Hudson South Transportation Coordinating Committee. This year, the co-chair has been selected from the Nassau Suffolk Transportation Coordinating Committee, and that is Suffolk County Executive Bruce Blakeman. Excuse me. Yep, it is NASA. Just in case you wondered, it's NASA. So we congratulate Bruce Blakeman on taking over co-chair for this coming program year. He unfortunately was not available to join us today, but we very much look forward to working with him as council co-chair in his new role as Nassau County Executive. So my apologies. With that, we've had a very, very good session today for NYMTC. Greatly appreciate the staff here at NYMTC, led by Adam Levine. Thank you to our secretary, Deb Nelson, and the entire team for literally pulling all of this together. To conclude today's meeting, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Excellent. Do I have a second? Thank you, Jack. All right. With no objection, do I hear any objections? Everybody in agreement? All right. Thank you all very much. This meeting of NYMTC is officially adjourned. And thank you again to our guest speakers.